Rudy's Revelation.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
You can't handle the truth.
I'm an American. I have rights.
Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast. It is Thursday. I'm sorry, it's Wednesday. Wednesday, April 16th. Welcome to the podcast. We've got a few things to talk about today. Well, it looks like the tariffs are working in the trade war with China. China is beginning to buckle. We didn't see it right away, and we won't see it clearly for months, if not a year. But what happened is the Chinese communists were preparing for the tariffs that Trump announced on the campaign trail. If he won, they knew the tariffs were coming. So what they did is they ramped up production to flood the markets with their cheap goods. But within a month or so, we're going to start seeing a deterioration of their economy because apparently the Chinese are worried about what's happening, and they're going to cut back on their spending. While the Americans seem to be resilient in their spending. And so you have a tale of two worlds. The U.S. market, which has a great foundational basis in consumerism, and the Chinese market that is really not what they claim it to be. It's not real. All right, so let's get into the news for today, April 16th, 2025. All right, we're going to start out with Zero Hedge. Respect and clarity. China opens door for re-engaging Trump in trade talks. NASDAQ 100 and S&P 500 E-mini futures trimmed overnight losses after China reportedly laid out a set of preconditions for resuming trade talks with President Trump and his administration. This is stellar news because we don't want a trade war with China. We want better trade conditions with all our trading partners, particularly China, because they're an adversary. Technically, we're still at war with them. They know this. They consider themselves an adversary. And they say, well, anything that we do that adversely affects China is war. So this is great news that they're willing to come to the table. Hopefully we can negotiate ourselves out of this war, but what Trump set in motion just has to be done. We need to decouple from China, particularly with things that we need like rare earth minerals and pharmaceuticals, among some other things. But one of those things is not cheap t-shirts and clothing or sneakers. A more telling story comes out of the Sunday New York Times. Well, actually, this is yesterday's New York Times, excuse me. China girds for economic stress of Trump's tariffs. The economy grew steadily from January through March, but U.S. tariffs pose risk for China in coming weeks and months. Basically, just what I said here is coming from this article, which is the New York Times, that is favorable of China, to say the least, and is owned by a billionaire, the oligarchy. And it's really the oligarchy that benefits from trade with China. So let's get into the story here a little bit. China's National Bureau of Statistics reported on Wednesday that the country's gross domestic product grew by 1.2% from the last 3 months of 2024. If that pace continues, the Chinese economy will expand at an annual rate of 4.9%. But whether China can maintain that growth is shrouded in uncertainty. It won't be able to. It won't be able to. Months and months of preparing for the trade war has given them this boost. And don't forget that China's economy was growing at like 10%, way above 5%. And it started to slow last year, and then particularly after Trump got into office. The article goes on to say, but the tariff increases this month are likely to have a substantial effect on China's exports going forward. Mr. Trump also placed and a week later paused heavy import taxes on goods from Vietnam, Cambodia, and other countries that assemble Chinese components for shipment to the United States. Those countries still face a 10% baseline tariff that applies to nearly all U.S. trading partners. Some factories in southern China have already suspended operations since the start of April as American tariffs have reached prohibitive levels. That has raised concerns about whether unemployment may increase in China. It's a state-run economy, so they can manipulate their economy and manipulate their currency. And just like Joe Biden was trying to do, the government can always just hire people. Whether or not the Chinese have the ability to hire 1 billion people or 500 million or what have you. And back to the article, China's National Bureau of Statistics said the economic output in the first 3 months of this year was 5.4% higher than it was the previous year. That's because of their increased economic output. Manufacturing investment was 9.1% higher in the first quarter compared to the same period last year. As I just said, they increased their output knowing that the tariffs were coming as companies continue to pour money into factory construction and equipment. I don't know why they did that. Infrastructure investment was up 5.8%, while real estate investment continued its long slide, doubling 9.9%. The Chinese people aren't buying real estate. They overbuilt in China as a way to spur economic growth, even though they didn't have the people, they didn't have the market. See, when you manipulate markets like the socialists do, you're just playing the game of capitalism without having the supply and demand, which is the foundation of a capitalist system. It goes on to say a weaker currency could make China's exports more competitive in foreign markets because the Chinese central bank, as you can see here, allowed the country's currency, then renminbi, to decline very slowly against the dollar. And this is what people are supposing that Trump did. Oh, he's weakening the dollar. But he's weakening the dollar ahead of the tariff negotiations, which would make American imports cheaper. So, as China is doing, competitive in foreign markets by reducing their relative cost, it goes on to say, but any gradual decline is likely to be too small to make a difference against tariffs that have raised the cost of trade by more than 100%. And a sharp devaluation could trigger financial instability by prompting Chinese households to pull their money out of banks and try to send it overseas. And there's also a quote here from Xi Zhengrong. People are reluctant to spend, so fewer people purchase pork. Said this butcher. Some customers used to buy a couple of pounds of pork at a time, but now buy as little as a quarter of a pound. So they're pulling back on their spending, while Americans are unlikely to do this. They're not as frugal as the Chinese. Because it's a difference of facing hardship over generations. The American, particularly American youth, but American young people are so far from want that they don't understand what could be around the corner, which is a plus and a minus. Construction and other real estate activity have represented as much as a quarter of the Chinese economic output before the housing meltdown, but has stalled as demand for new apartments has dried up. They're in trouble. Even the New York Times says so. We got good news for American manufacturing. One American News reports Honda moving manufacturing to U.S. as Trump tariffs prompt production shift. And by the way, the Japanese are meeting with Trump today to discuss and iron out trade conditions and negotiate those trade conditions. The Federalist is reporting tariff critics have no answer to Trump's national security arguments about Chinese manufacturing. And this is indeed the case. As I said, we need to decouple from China. Nobody really cares because they don't even know where China is on a map. The onus is on those who favored policies that have left us imperiled to present a better plan than Trump's to defend American interest. If the status quo in global trade were to persist, would America remain the world's dominant power, or would we be more likely to eclipse or be eclipsed by our worst adversary, Communist China? That is the key question. The globalists, the financiers, and their corporate media mouthpieces who have ginned up hysteria and market panic in the days following President Donald Trump's announcement of reciprocal tariffs on a dozen of trade partners should have no answer. What Ben Weingarten of the Federalist is saying here is that, and as I mentioned at the start, that we have to decouple from China. China is our enemy. They look at themselves as our enemy. All the promises they made about when they were granted admission to the WTO were never realized. And as people would often say, they continually lie and steal and cheat, including doing things that are considered unfair in global trade and global economics, like currency manipulation. More headlines from the post-millennial. Trump bans illegal immigrants from getting Social Security. The order directs the administration to ensure eligible aliens are not receiving funds from Social Security Act program. If you're here illegally, doesn't matter if you've been working for decades with a Social Security card, how you got a Social Security card if you're a legal immigrant, I don't know. But that you shouldn't receive those benefits. I don't care if you paid into it. You could have continued to work without a Social Security card. If you're here illegally, if you don't have legal permanent status, and even if you have legal permanent resident status, you're not a citizen. So you're still subject for deportation because any status that you're given is at the pleasure of the federal government. And if they're displeased with you, they could just take away your status. Particularly if you're involved in crime. Also, Just the News reports on this story. Trump administration prepares to go after non-citizens who defraud entitlement programs, and they're talking again about Social Security. And we'll go into the story here. The White House announced Tuesday plans to protect Social Security benefits from non-citizens and ramp up anti-fraud efforts. White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt outlined key points from the memorandum to reporters at a press briefing on Tuesday afternoon. Through the memorandum, Trump aims to stop non-citizens and other ineligible people from obtaining Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid benefits, in part by expanding fraud prosecution across the country. Also, the Washington Examiner says Abrego Garcia isn't the winning political issue Democrats think he is. If you didn't know what was going on here. First of all, let me just go back to something, is that I already explained this. Social Security is for citizens. It's not for, well, I guess it's for legal permanent residents as well. Because I guess if you get a green card, you pay into Social Security. But if you're an illegal immigrant, how do you even get a Social Security card? No one's explained that to me in the first place. Okay, going into this Maryland man, Abrego Garcia, who was sent back to his native country of El Salvador, and I guess put into prison there. And they claim he was an MS-13 gang member. But some people say he is. It's almost a moot point. He's here legally, and he was deported. What happens to him after he was deported is, I don't regard that in any sense. He was here illegally. He was encountered by federal officials. And just because one administration allows people to come here illegally doesn't mean the next administration can't deport them. So what the Washington Examiner is saying here is that it's not a winning political issue, which I don't think it is. One might think that President Donald Trump unilaterally sending economy into recession, Democrats might have at least a temporary champions of free trade in an effort to find their way back out of the political wilderness. But instead, the Democrats have chosen a different path. Indeed, despite the fact that immigration is one issue voters still give Trump the highest marks on, Democrats have chosen to make a man named Kilmar Abrego Garcia the face of the Trump resistance. It might work with some progressives, but for the majority of Americans, they don't care about one guy if he's sent back to El Salvador where he came from, if he was here illegally. And as the Washington Examiner points out, you could pick a fight on trade. It's not going to be a winning issue for more than a couple months. There are a lot of things that the Democrats are grabbing onto, but they're not really, they're not really living up to their base and their foundation, which was the economic plight of the middle and lower class and democracy, the process, one man, one vote sort of thing. Let the chips fall where they may, because the reason the power is behind the Democratic Party is because democracy is easily manipulated. And that's the whole point of the Open Society Foundation, George Soros's NGO, is that, if we have an open society, it's easily infiltrated. And that lies democracy also. If you let every vote count, even the illegal ones, you're able to manipulate the system. Okay. Let's move on. All right. Mediaite is reporting cancel vacations. Irritated judge orders Trump DOJ lawyers to clear their schedules for 2 weeks for a 2-week inquiry into the Abrego Garcia case. How does a judge launch an investigation? Now, this judge is launching an inquiry, which is an investigation. How does that happen? Shouldn't it be the Attorney General in her district? The lower federal prosecutor? I guess it's in Maryland. Launch an investigation into what? The judge wants to find out if Trump had an opportunity to turn the plane around. Doesn't matter. This has already been talked out many, many times with pundits that are a lot more knowledgeable than me, is that once the plane took off, there's no legal precedent to turn the plane around. So the judge was hurrying up her decision, but the Holman and the Trump administration knew what she was doing. She was going to give a speedy order, but they moved the flight up a few hours to actually take off before a decision was made. So there's nothing to talk about. The Federalist. The Maryland man hoax is designed to criminalize immigration enforcement. By convincing Americans illegal aliens are indistinguishable from citizens, the left is hoping to delegitimize any attempt to enforce our immigration laws while making Americans feel morally conflicted about their right to do so. And this is a good point. The point being is that the Democrats, whether it's allowing illegals to vote, giving illegals social security cards, allowing them to milk the social safety net of that's there for American citizens to take jobs and to work and do all these things. That's exactly what they're doing, is trying to make it indistinguishable, and they're telling their voters as well that, you know what, that these are just people too, and they have the right to be here. When they don't. They go on to say the propaganda in the lead in the story by Brianna Lyman, the propaganda press's latest manufactured sob story isn't just another hit piece targeting President Donald Trump. It's part of a manufactured strategic campaign to guilt Americans out of supporting immigration enforcement and to delegitimize the very concept of national borders and citizenship. Fox News is reporting J.D. Vance sounds off on deportation, ratification of Biden's illegal migrant invasion via fake legal process. The American people elected the Trump administration to solve this problem, Vance also noted. He went on to say, and he suggested that if the people crying lack of due process regarding the deportation of illegal aliens do not have a proposed solution that allows the nation to remove at least several million illegal aliens annually, they do not actually want to achieve border security and expel the illegal immigrants. When the media and the far left obsess over MS-13 gang member and demand that he be returned to the United States for a third deportation hearing, if you didn't listen to Perry and I last night on episode 113 of Tuesdays with Perry, we discussed this at length, and that Mr. Garcia had several deportation hearings in which the sheriff's department testified that the guy was an MS-13 gang member. And that for one judge, and even ICE determined that he was, and then for one judge to say, oh, well, that's not conclusive enough for me. What they're really saying, J.D. Vance went on to say in the next post, what they're really saying is they want the vast majority of illegal aliens to stay here permanently. Of course they do, because that was the whole objective. And the objective is actually for the oligarchy that Bernie Sanders talks about, is that big business wants to, A, have all these illegal aliens here to bring down wages, and also to use them for lower than required wage. Post-Millennial is reporting ICE arrests over 1,000 illegal immigrants in the worksite enforcement operations, fines businesses over $1 million for violations. Businesses that exploit and hire illegal workers are harming the American public. Indeed, harming the American worker. And there are certain industries that we need migrant workers for, but I would like to say that I think there should be increased migrant worker programs. I'm all for that. But that doesn't mean people can come here illegally and stay here illegally and work illegally. Excuse me. Article goes on to say, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement has arrested more than 1,000 illegal aliens during worksite enforcement operations since January 20th, enacting nearly $1 million worth of fines. HSI Acting Director Robert Hammer said worksite enforcement operations have increased over the past 2 months and warned that businesses that knowingly hire illegal alien labor is a federal crime. Indeed it is. Moving on with some stories from Fox News. Senator Josh Hawley urges Republicans to cut taxes for the working class voters who put Trump in the White House. Republicans are setting the tax policies in Trump's big, beautiful bill. I agree. I said this a long time ago. I can't believe we're still at square one with this shit. That that they're not putting, first of all, the no tax on tips should be the first one. Whether you want to cut payroll taxes, that's a completely different thing. That's my problem. If you don't want to cut payroll tax, you don't have to cut payroll tax. But you should do the no tax on tips. That was a promise. And no tax on Social Security. That was a promise. We should do those things immediately before we start talking about the bill and defense spending. Although defense spending is very important to the economy, I'm anti-war, but spending on defense is one of the biggest boosters of economic progress. Story goes on to say that Hawley, a Republican in Missouri, is urging his Republican colleagues to double down on tax cuts for the working class. These are the people who put Trump in the White House, referring to Americans who earn less than $80,000 a year. Indubitably, Trump signs executive order. In this, we have an article here from the Post Millennial. Trump signs executive order to lower insulin to 3 cents, epinephrine to $15 for low-income patients. The order is also aimed at standardizing medical payments for prescription drugs, such as cancer treatments. This is all great news for the American working class. I have to agree that this was a good move by Trump. But we have to get this bill passed. I don't like the spending involved in it, but if you include tax cuts as an expenditure, I don't think you should do that, but they are. Semaphore is reporting Fed resists pressure to rescue Treasury market. If you didn't know what was going on in the Treasury market, the Federal Reserve is resisting pressure from the White House and Washington to spur big banks to buy more Treasury bonds, a reluctance that could further shake an unnerved market for U.S. debt. And we talked about this yesterday where China was selling their treasuries. And so to make up the difference, they want American banks to pick up the treasuries, and they don't want to do that because American banks are the Federal Reserve that people are buying the bonds from. So why would somebody who's issuing the bonds buy the bonds? Doesn't make any sense. Higher yields on government bonds are signs of stress and eroding faith in the American government to pay its bills. And if you didn't know exactly what goes on here is that if the bond rate goes up, down, goes up, it's bad for the stock market. I think that's correct. I'm not a financial whiz by any means. I understand how it works, but not in this case. I know there's an inverse relationship between bonds and the rest of the market, stocks and general economics, state economics. What the fuck? Hello. All right, moving on. Florida, DeSantis says Florida Republicans rotten and colluding with Democrats amid Hope Florida controversy. So if you didn't know what this was, his wife set up this not-for-profit, Hope Florida, touting as an alternative to government welfare. He also announced the organization now has liaisons at state colleges to help students in need and questioned why Republicans would want to look into the organization. This just blows my mind. DeSantis said these guys in Florida House of Representatives, you've got a cabal of them in leadership. DeSantis says they're colluding with the liberal media and the Democrat Party in Florida to try to manufacture smears against Hope Florida and, of course, the governor. So the uniparty is rearing its ugly head again. And this is certainly of no surprise, is because you thought the uniparty was down and out, particularly the neocons on the Republican side, but they're not. They might lay low, they might play nice with Trump, but the reality is that they haven't gone away. The uniparty, the establishment has not gone away by any means. But the left moves more left. In an unprecedented move, the DNC official, that's David Hogg, to spend big to take down fellow Democrats. David Hogg, the DNC vice chair, wants to take down some safe incumbents. Leaders We Deserve, which Hogg co-founded in 2023, announced plans on Tuesday to spend $20 billion in safe blue Democratic primaries against sitting House members by supporting younger opponents. In an interview with Politico, Hogg said the group will not back primary challenges in battleground districts because I want to win the majority, nor will I target members solely based on their age. So he says he's not going to do it, even though he says he's pledging money. Hogg said the group will not back primary challenges in battleground districts because I want us to win the majority, nor will I target members solely based on their age. I don't really know what he's saying there. I think he is. The problem is the Democratic Party is moving further left. And so when you move further left, that's what happens. You're trying to court the progressives and you're moving the party further left. That's not going to win moderates. That's just going to send them over to the Republican Party. So I'm not really sure if this is the Democratic Party needs to do is consolidate. And they can't do that because they're disparate factions in there of socialists really undermining the moderate Democratic message, which they basically lost, which was catering to the middle class. But when you start taking money from corporate backers, you're doing their bidding. You're not doing the bidding of the middle class. So you might have heard about Republican town halls being infiltrated by Democrat activists. And what I'd like to say about this is the fact that we all knew that the Democrats and the media said they were Republicans that were mad at Trump and voicing their discontent with Trump. But that wasn't true. We found out time and time again that these people were Democrat activists that were sent to Republican town halls in an effort to give the impression that the Republicans were not happy with Trump. I just don't think that's the case. So Mediaite reports, you butch-bodied bigot, heckler lays into Marjorie Taylor Greene during town hall. Now you know it's a Democratic activist because that very line, butch-bodied bigot, was, I think, originally thrown out by Jasmine Crockett, who's becoming the face of the Democratic Party, much to the chagrin of moderates and other people with an education and who could speak English. More headlines from the New York Post. Suspected arsonist Cody Bomber targeted Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's home over what politician wants to do with the Palestinian people. Well, this is racism. So Josh Shapiro is a Jewish man, and so he, as many Jews that I guess are labeled Zionists because they support the state of Israel, so the guy's house gets firebombed because the guy is Jewish and supports Israel. So you'd be I wouldn't say hard pressed, but the majority of American Jews support Israel. What? I don't understand what's wrong with that. I just don't understand. I don't understand what's going on with this mic either. All right, and let's get to the meat of the matter. New York Times, UK top court says trans women are not legally women under the Equality Act. Britain's Supreme Court ruled that the word woman refers to a biological sex, and that's what a woman is a biological sex, is a human female. That's what a woman is. And under the country's anti-discrimination law is a blow to trans rights activists, which want to say that if I dress up as a woman and I think I'm a woman, then I'm a woman. And that's just not the case. You could say you're the Queen of England. That doesn't make you the Queen of England, even if you dress up like the Queen of England. And I think our last story here today is from Just the News. This needs a little clarification. Arrested FBI agent who targeted Giuliani hires firm that defended Hunter Biden. An arrested FBI agent who had publicly alleged Trump ally Rudy Giuliani may have been compromised by Russia and who had denied the FBI had mishandled its investigation into Hunter Biden is now represented by a law firm that defended Joe Biden's son. This guy is an asset of the establishment. The agent, Jonathan Buma, who had handled the confidential human sources for the Bureau, Buma had previously claims to Congress that the media alleged that he was involved with helping special counsel Robert Mueller investigation that debunked claims of Trump-Russia collusion and who had repeatedly taken aim at Giuliani while defending the Bureau's slow walking of the Hunter Biden investigation is now being defended by a high-profile law firm that defended Joe Biden's son and attacked the federal investigation against him. Well, isn't that something? I don't think all these things are connected. The establishment has, as I said many times before, the establishment has its tentacles involved in everything. There's stay-behind networks, and the establishment will help people that work for the establishment, that are agents of the establishment. You want to call it the cabal, you want to call it the uniparty, you can call it whatever you want. But this guy was an agent of the deep state. And now he's being defended by the deep state. And it's the same thing with Abrego Garcia. All right, he has high-priced lawyers now from a Democratic law firm. And these high-priced lawyers that apparently have cut their teeth on defending other gang members. I don't know. It's not right. There should be a framework of existence that is understood objectively by everyone, and we agree to those terms of the game, and then we go by those terms of the game. Unlike China or other socialists who are liars and cheaters and just want to win at the game by breaking the rules. They cheat, they lie, they steal. And you think they're compassionate, right? Well, if the true empathetic people in the United States knew what socialists, Democrats, and most liberals think, they probably wouldn't side with them. It's not up for interpretation. Objective reality is objective reality. We all agree to it. And that if we make laws through the democratic process, the legislature, then we should just abide by those laws, even if you think they're not fair. You might not want to walk your dog on a leash because you have a good dog, but if there's a leash law, you got to walk your dog on a leash. Or if you don't want to walk your dog on a leash, you could try to get the legislation or have legislation says that you can do it. Anyway, thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share the podcast. Remember, you're under attack psychologically and biologically. Stay hip to the trick. Join me every day, Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. live on Rumble. Check out my other website, libpop.org. All right, I'll see you tomorrow. Respect.
This is a conspiracy.
You maniac! You blew it up! Oh, damn you!